session, which is all about exploring CITP and looking at a different range of perspectives on the pathways to becoming chartered. So I'm Jo Stansfield. I run a business called Inclusioneering, so I help organisations with what I call inclusive innovation, which is about being inclusive, obviously, in their technology development and adoption, and also upholding kind of ethical and responsible standards and those things. So CITP is something that's very interesting to me from that point of view around being professional and actually how we really do carry out our work responsibly as the best standards. So Monica is joining me as host, so would you like to introduce yourself, Monica?
Thank you. Yes, I'm Monica Gawelska. I represent the Edinburgh branch, one of the Scottish branches of BCS, and I'm here also representing that CITP status is a valuable status for branches across the UK and beyond. And I'm happy to know more also from the guests that recently obtained the status. So, yeah.
So we've decided to hold this event as a co-event, so I'm co-chair of BCS Women, I'm also a member of BCS Council. And Monica and I both met each other kind of towards the end of last year at an event here in London where I was being interviewed by Dallin, who was here a minute ago but seems to have vanished. And, you know, part of that event we started talking about being chartered and how that was something that was aspirational to me and something that was important to the profession. And Monica and I found each other afterwards in the refreshments and networking and just started chatting about how that's actually something that's important and interesting to both of us. And so this idea for having this event was born from that. And then of course coincides very nicely with Chartered Week, which we'll be hearing more about. So the opportunity to actually join that together with this much bigger kind of effort and advocacy around chartership seems like a too good an opportunity to miss. So, I think it's time to introduce our panel. So let me first introduce Alistair Revell, who is our BCS president, our current president, and it's your presidential theme around chartership and registration. On the screen behind us all, Paul, I don't know if you can tell, you're busy looking over everyone's shoulders. We have Paul Martinienko, who's a BCS past president, and he's the current vice president for Registration and Standards Committee, which is the part of the organisation responsible for professional standards, which includes CITP.
And Sarina Bernstein, also BCS Fellow and BCS Champion member of BCS Enterprise Architecture Committee. And Phil Sewell, experienced IT professional, recently awarded with the CITP status.
Yeah, welcome to everyone. It's wonderful to have you here, and I'm looking forward to our discussion. So, Alistair, let's start with you.
You know.
You got some forewarning.
I did.
So chartered professionalism is really very much part of what your presidency has been about. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, for me, I've been passionate throughout my career about professionalism, in particular chartered professionalism. So it was no-brainer to me when I ended up in this post what my theme would be for the presidential year. And I chose officially sort of chartered and professional registrations, which I think are intensely important. If you reflect on how the IT industry works, and by IT industry I mean IT, digital, computing, AI, quantum, whatever we morph into and morph out of, the thing which is so important is actually not just having something to rely on, because most people think about applying for jobs, it comes down to almost where you work for. You'll have a reference probably. They all say that you work there from this date to that date, not much else, because the insurer is not overly happy about anything which goes outside of that scope. Some people might have a degree, but it might not even be. So how do you know other than that they actually have any competence whatsoever, other than that no one has fired them? Well, at least you assume that. And of course, as our world moves to increasingly short terms of tenure, will move it's quite difficult to know whether someone was actually moved on or actually progressed because they were really good. For me, that asymmetry between an expert and the consumer expertise is really quite difficult for people to navigate. There's no way of actually telling without perhaps a third party, and that's what for me Chartership is about, in the sense that you've got a third party, BCS in this case, running a register under authority from the government essentially, the Royal Charter, which is stuck in the law, the extra, gives us the power to run that. Basically the state says you can run this register, so we have an obligation to do that. So being assessed to be competent in that register is really so that's key driver around Chartership. But you also want me just to sort of touch base on why I Chartered Week?
I would, yeah. Please tell us more about that.
So early in my tenure of the presidential role, I realised that we should really do something about the whole of Chartered, because it is a massive thing, and we would benefit as an organisation if people understood in the general public what chartered means. Most people have encountered a chartered accountant, but chartered IT professional, chartered engineer, it tails off. And I thought making a big bang about the whole concept behind Chartership was really, really important. But I wanted to make sure that we didn't just do it for BCS, because that would have not gone very far and wide, and we wouldn't have got that parity. I mean, basically the Royal Charters, which are out there, which give organisations like BCS the authority, are, that is really important. And we have a parity with chartered accountants and chartered surveyors and chartered anyone else that you might encounter. So Chartered Week basically brings all the bodies together. We've got some 40 bodies officially signed up, supporting from the individual agencies. Just shouting, celebrating trusted professionals. It's not just about necessarily chartered professionals, it's also about other registered professionals. Because in our profession, we also have sort of technicians as a recognised sort of level, and that's really important to celebrate as well. That might be a where people end up. For some people, it might be a stepping stone towards chartered. But it's all very, very important. So the whole week is about celebrating chartered and registered professional registrations. And I don't know if you've been looking on LinkedIn and Twitter and other places, but it's gone way beyond what I expected. When I set the notion in running with our marketing team, I was asked, well, what would success look like? So I said, well, maybe a dozen and a half organisations joining in with us. That would be good for the first year. Prove the pilot. Well, we've got 40, and there are I've seen at least another 10 organisations which haven't, as far as I'm aware, contacted us and said we want to be in on this, who are actually suddenly realising that Chartered Week is growing exponentially at the moment and chipped in. So I've seen Chartered, I think it's a Chartered Association of Sports therapists involved with the Chartered Society. So it's great, and it's proving that parity across all chartered professions. Which is good.
That's really wonderful. It's amazing. Certainly my LinkedIn feed is full of Chartered Week.
I'm sorry.
It's all new.
Yeah, so I used I'm also a trustee with the Engineering Council, which is, if you don't know, is a collection of about 38 professional engineering institutes, the PEIs. So I knew that would be a relatively soft touch to sort of say to our STEM peers, as it were, in engineering, let's get on and do this. And I had a breakfast meeting at the end of the summer and persuaded them that this was the right thing to do. On the same board, Anne Frank, as the chief exec of the Chartered Management Institute, said, yes, she was in. And then we've managed to just knock on lots of doors and say, what about this? And people said, well, it's a no-brainer. Why aren't we doing this? We should be in on this. So it's just snowballed.
Yeah, it's wonderful to see so much engagement. Actually, obviously, Chartership is very important.
It is.
So many people across so many different professions.
Absolutely.
So I wonder, because you mentioned about the BCS. For me, it's a powerhouse for human integrity, and given that I also said that I'm here to learn from the people that are familiar with the recent changes, the question is to Paul, who are responsible for them and probably also you designed them in a way. Could you tell us about your motivation for the changes in the application process and a bit more about the process itself?
So I think if you look back to charter status in CITP in particular, then the first people on the register are about 2004. So it's a pretty long time ago. Around 2011, we introduced the examination, and the first time we said you had to be currently competent. That examination was a broad spread across IT, and we struggled with that a bit because, you know, are you going to be skilled in ITIL? Are you going to be skilled in programming? What are you? And as time's gone on, the industry has grown and grown and grown. There are more and more people in different parts of the industry who are doing different jobs. So the answer is, we better recognize people in specialisms. So if you're a cyber person, or if you're a data person, or if you're a leader, or if you're an educationalist, you can still have chartered IT. In fact, you must have chartered IT professional, but you have a specialism. And that specialism gives us a much broader reach. And to pick up on Alistair's point, it makes sure that when we're talking to the ultimate person who makes the decision to employ us or not, whether that's a client, whether it's it's within our own industry, you can actually identify to them that you've been independently assessed against a standard, and typically to a specialisation as well. So as we increase those specialisations, whoever's talking to you automatically knows that you've been assured at that level. And that's the changes we've made. So we've introduced specialisms, and we've introduced a really good new way of applying and getting through and doing this. And we're building on fellowship, and we're building on membership changes that we've made to that as well. So, you know, it's about trust. It's about trust in understanding what you do, and it's helping people understand better what specific things you're doing. I think that's what we've done. Alistair, would you agree?
Yeah, I would. I really think one of the big and important things, Paul, that we pulled off is that move to specialisms, because for many people in IT, and I don't think my career is unique by any means, is we move from one specialism to another. Essentially, if I'm being blunt, we chase the money and the employment opportunities. But I've been in service management, I've been in software development, I've been in cyber, I'm in consulting, and you know, back in the day, Paul, I had a certificate of current competence for the whole of IT, which really wasn't quite on. Because I wouldn't confess to that myself, but the new approach of actually having that certificate of current competence stating which professional specialisms you're competent in makes so much sense. And I think it's charter once, and then look at your specialisms as you go along. So you have many specialisms, and some after 5 years you might not renew because you're no longer in that area, you've moved on from that, it's no longer significant in your career, but you might well have taken on some other specialisms. You might even have a transition period when conceivably you might have a couple, and therefore that makes a hell of a lot of sense, because otherwise we end up with a situation where you become chartered in software development, chartered business analyst, chartered cybersecurity, chartered this, chartered that. And if you think about it, that's a professional registration fee for everything, with different registers, ever so slightly different processes. It makes a complete meal of it. When keeping it simple and just developing new specialisms, which will evolve over time, won't they? I believe.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it. So we have a very good process now whereby registration and standards can observe what's happening in the marketplace, and working with members, decide which are the new specialisms that our stakeholders, our employers, our students, university, whatever it is, which are those specialisms which, as Alistair say, rise to the top. There are some maybe that we don't have. We just keep it current. And I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, it's certainly been something that's been quite important to me. So I don't have CITP status yet. I started my career as a software engineer, and actually chartered engineering status just made a lot of sense for me to have gone for that. But then I switched my career. I pivoted to the human side of tech, and I work now much more with people and data about people. So actually the new CITP specialism in data and analytics actually now makes an awful lot of sense. So I can now see a really clear path where the work I do fits. It is still part of CITP, which is lovely. It's very much something that I'm aspiring to achieve, and actually appreciating this panel from that perspective as well. Serena, we'll come to you now. because you're someone who has achieved your CITP relatively recently, and I know that's something that's been a very prominent sort of factor in some of the work that you've been doing recently as well. Can you tell us more about your journey and what's motivated you?
Oh, of course. So Serena Barnsby. I achieved CITP towards the end of last year and also fellowship as well. With CITP, one thing that really resonated with me is that it was that external validation. It's industry recognised achieving charter status. But compared to other things, so throughout my career, I've passed a lot of external exams, you know, if it's based on set knowledge in a domain or from a certain cloud provider or anything like that. What was really different and what made getting chartered status and CITP really unique was that it was based on my career history. It was about the projects I ran, what I delivered, the transformation projects. And it was that being validated by a professional body that was external. It's not just me saying, you know, I operate at this level. And it was also backed with the Royal Charter. Things like that, it validated my competencies. And I'm really excited about the specialisms. As you said, it can evolve throughout your career and all that, and that can really help signpost your career journey from that.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
And it's been something that you've been advocating for in your workplace, isn't it?
Yes, I'm fortunate enough. We were talking in the hallway earlier, Alistair, on how last week 5 members from the company I work for have achieved charter status. 3 of them, I don't know if they know yet, but I know. We'll give you a shout out on LinkedIn later on. But yeah, over the past 12 months, I've helped support over, it was 40, but probably 50 now this year, people achieve charter status. And for me, I had a little bit of hesitation applying for my own. We'll talk about that later on when we talk about the journey. But I guess the real thing is just really just looking at other people. That's why I'm really excited about Chartered Week. You've got that phrase, you've got to see it to be it.
Yeah.
And if you see other people who achieved Chartered, they can help support you on that journey. And it seems something tangible. It's that shift in mindset from I want that one day to what do we need to do to make it happen today.
There's certainly a tsunami of applications growing, I sense. I mean, I'm talking to lots of people, and it's been talking about Chartered for years, and it's not until this year that things have really seemed to be starting to grow in terms of momentum. I think part of that is probably due to the Horizon scandal and people realising that, you know, we need to step up to the plate as IT professionals. We can't hide behind sort of ignorance of the law. We're not lawyers. We don't need to worry about whether we're doing the right thing or the wrong thing. That's simply not right. And we all know that instinctively. And I think the other thing which is really happening is people are scared about, well, general public are scared about AI and its massive, you know, rise. I mean, we were here yesterday for Convene, and there was an AI strand to that, and that conference showed how much excitement there is and how much is actually happening in the AI space. But the general public don't really understand what AI can do, and that worries them. So they need people who can be trusted and have assurance, which a chartered register applies. And I also think we need accountability in the public register by having a name, putting your name onto a public register which says, I am prepared to stand up and be counted as being a professionally competent and ethical individual is really, really significant.
So Alistair, you said about BCS being good for the society in that context, and mentioned about the recent scandal with the post office. Well, I have a question to you as you represent the world of IT professionals as well, and recently got the status. What was your journey?
So first of all, I absolutely echo what my peers on the panel are saying in terms of the motivations for achieving Chartership and CITP. My journey is relatively short. I only graduated in 2016, so I haven't even hit the 10 years, you know, in terms of the longevity of my career. But within a relatively small space of time, I've entered into sort of companies that I used to work for as a graduate software engineer. Then slowly over time, I have been now in a fortunate position where I lead a couple of Scrum teams as a technical leader. throughout, those 9 years, I've seen kind of highs and lows. I've seen the good and the bad side of people and the competencies. Within the IT profession, for me, it was very opinionated, it was very subjective, there was no kind of standard. And as Alistair mentioned, there's kind of a lack of accountability. So everyone kind of did what they thought was best. And it didn't really sit right with me, which is why I'm here, I guess, because I'm here to kind of promote the fact that achieving this milestone is a really good thing to have. And why can't we be like other industries? Why can't we be like the civil and structural engineers or the finance industry, right? There's no reason why IT professionals shouldn't get some form of recognition, and also we should really be pushing to make any form of recognition sort of more the norm, like the other industries.
I really like what you say, especially that I work also for consulting, and we are in the city that is very diverse, very competitive. It's good to stand out, and it's a good recognition. The signal from the noise, it goes everyone. And given that I also work for my PhD in the area of reputation systems and trust and recognition, it's important for me to know that the qualification given by the status is well received by the industry and also by academic. And I'm also positively surprised that more people with a lot of experience who felt a bit shy and maybe scared by not doing that, like not applying because they felt like maybe they are not ready yet, they kind of should, because this is something that they can prove by what they've done already. This is what you said, Sarina, that sometimes we already have learned these things, we just haven't applied yet, so it's...
Can I interject just a couple of things which sparks in my head, which I think are quite important? I referenced Horizon. One of the problems that employers have in working out whether you improve things bad is when you did something reasonable or not, which is probably a specifically legal thing. But standards establish what people should do. So then that gives the lawyers an opportunity to say, well, was that the right thing to have done or the wrong thing to do? Was it with the standard or against the standard? And that's really important in saying that you've acted unreasonably and therefore you should be culpable at law. And that's going to be an interesting outflow, I suspect, from the Horizon stuff in the long term. But I think having been on this track to really establishing a chartered profession for IT, digital and computing is really important. The other thing I wanted to say, which I thought was really significant, is that you certainly mentioned with hesitancy. I think I had that. I read a post on LinkedIn this afternoon from the president of Chartered Institute of Public Relations, who publicly put out there that when she became chartered a decade ago, in her profession, she was, LMG, she posted, am I ready? Have I got it right? All that hesitancy is natural. I think as experts, there's that saying, isn't there? The more you know, the more you know that you don't know, and that makes you possibly more and more hesitant. So I think it's really important to go for it, basically, when you're at that moment.
A funny story, actually, when I was thinking about applying for the chartership, I think on the BCS website there's a questionnaire, right. and it kind of says, right, what level are you on? And for me, I'm not the most I'm not a very confident person. Right? For me, it was great to achieve it and achieve a level of kind of, I guess it's a bit of a confidence boost once you do get it. But when I was originally filling in that questionnaire, it was kind of saying, you're not ready for chartership. And it was like, okay, is that because I've answered the questions based on what I believe, but actually what I believe is completely like down here, whereas what other people view as is kind of up there. And it's like, okay, it was a confidence hit, but I thought, I'm just going to go for it anyway. What's the worst that can happen, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of people have that imposter feeling. That's what they call it. I think. Yeah.
I think one thing I love building is communities and peer groups. That's one thing that's really worked well for me. So I had an accountability buddy. We would, meet up, talk about, where we were, even saying we haven't started yet. Being honest and open, and seeing yourself through someone else's eyes when you talk about your experience is something completely different. We're not necessarily our own advocates when it comes to different things. But one of the things that I really, really like doing, and probably should admit to this, but sometimes I do look back at my CITP application and I look back and I go, whoa, it's written in black and white in a star or stare in the new format. And it talks about all these things that I've delivered, results, and all the value that I've created. And it's a really great reflection point. But starting it when you're looking at a blank piece of paper, it's just getting over that hurdle.
I also see CITP is very much the capstone over the top of a lot of other certifications that people may have. If you look at more traditional, more mature professions like accountancy, if you become an accountant, you have to do a zillion exams. And get it. Chartered management accountants face something like 18. So they're also sort of providing the format of that you go through. With us, we basically are measuring where you've got to. You have to demonstrate that you've crossed that line, which is the CITP line, if you will. Are you at that level? And that's the important thing. So it's about demonstrating, measuring that you've got to that level. And I think that is significant as well.
Should we?
Could I just the last question? It came to my mind. I believe that applying is like putting things in. And I wonder, Alistair, if you could say a little bit more about the aspects of the application, because there is a whole section about it, and I think that is extremely important that we see ourselves as IT professionals.
Being ethical certainly is absolutely critical. I think ethics in IT is really, really, really important. That's probably one of the drivers for me personally as to why I really get the division there are all sorts of levels. I mean, I'm probably going down a rabbit hole, and perhaps Paul should answer the question about what's the reflection of myself. But what I would say is that there are lots. I talk to lots of people about various things as a website. Just narrowing on that, the number of websites in the UK which are actually not compliant with the Companies Act 2006 is something that I could probably drone on about for hours. So don't encourage me. But there's also there's the Equality Act as well, etc. And you end up with a situation where you have web developers who can actually develop a website, and it's this price. And that seems very attractive to the client. And you can develop a website and it's this price. But they don't understand what the difference is because they look colorblind. You may not have tried it out. The ethics just around that piece is really important. So I don't know if Paul wants to pick up on the actual.
So the first thing we'd like to do is those of us remote are actually struggling a little bit. Initially, there was too much noise, and now you've suppressed it so that we only hear half of what you're saying. So if you could just get the engineer back in, and as one of our colleagues on the phone said, if he's a chartered engineer, that would be even better.
Dial them on it, I think.
And in the meantime, prepare with your questions. We'll start with the question. Yes.
Well, it's very if it's going to come up to here, we don't hear the questions.
We'll repeat questions, so we'll make sure that you can hear online.
So just before we get to that, I'd just like to build on the point about how do you get help when you're if you're sitting there and you're thinking, I don't make this standard, I'm not as good as that, right? Well, actually, yesterday we ran the first pathway program. So we're going to run a series of pathway programs where people can join and understand and talk together and learn from how we can build CITP. The first one we ran yesterday was for 50 people. 55 actually attended, so we got more. So you'll see these being advertised through our newsletters and so on, places where people can come and get a better view of exactly how you might address and not be shy about what you've done, because I think too many people are that. So it's a really good piece of work and trying to follow up on what you've talked about. So thank you, Mr. Sound Engineer.
That helps.
No,
Take it.
I'll make a joke about how my husband would love that mute function on me.
Can I be a little bit light-hearted about this?
Yes, please do.
Okay. Trust a trader. If I look at the Trust a Trader website and choose somebody, I expect to be able to look up references about what they've done and be able to telephone people and all that. I don't know what the current process is for CITP. Do you do that? So for example, if I wanted to employ Selina as a hardware engineer, because that's what she's applied for, could I check her out, phone past employers, etc.? Paul or Alistair?
Paul, could you hear?
So we don't follow up on past employers. In the CITP process, what you do is you fill out your application form, you identify your skills, and you have a supporter, and potentially you can be interviewed as well. So we don't go all the way. So if you take a hardware engineer, we wouldn't go back through their career looking at things. What you evidence, and it is evidence, is what you've achieved against the SOPHIA criteria. And they're pretty good descriptions of that. And you are a member of the BCS, so you are bound by a code of conduct. Your supporter supports what you say, and the assessor looks at it. You don't go into the sort of the past history, ringing previous employers, doing the detective work that you might do beyond that. And I don't think anybody does that from a professional institute point of view. You evidence what you do through using SOPHIA and through by completing your application form and having your supporter agree and evidence what you've done.
Looking at external validation that had CITP, when I achieved it, I actually opted into a register. So you can be registered on the website for other people to confirm. It's an opt-in, opt-out policy. So you've got that method as well to see if individuals have achieved certain statuses.
Okay. And the register will also say what your specialism is, whether you're active, inactive, or retired. So you've published your name as being CITP. You've made the standard.
Yeah.
Sorry, can I chip in? Because based on what you said, apparently in any organization, if you want to apply, an individual have got kind of a CV, you can make a reference to what they've done.
You got it.
I think.
Yeah. I used to work for a company called PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I was assured, that was the key word, that I would be checked out thoroughly. And I knew I was because my past employers were contacted about me. Not only that I'd been there 9 to 5 on certain days, but I actually achieved what I claimed to.
Exactly.
And that is what I would hope the BCS aspires to make sure that we have people who we can put into any situation knowing their competence, their proven competence. So it kind of surprises me about what you said.
On
You
that
can look at
note,
your CV though.
I wanted to comment on that because I'm preparing with my applications and working quite carefully on all the details, and it's a huge application, and then the matrix of skills and identifying them takes time, and it's some sort of even professional coaching, thinking about ourselves against this matrix. I found it very rewarding in a way. But to answer your question, the CV must be also submitted, and the supporter who would be responsible for some sort of confirmation on whatever is in the application also needs to be a part of a chartered professional body with the ethical conduct. And in many cases, this is the manager, employer, and people who actually know the line of work of people applying. So I believe that we can ask many questions, and I'm pretty sure that many people will try to find the shortcuts, but it's extremely hard to do that given the path that was established.
Yeah, Monica, you're right. And what we want to achieve is a number of professionals who are proven professionals and are CITP. Therefore, there's a balance in terms of, how deep do we go, etc., etc. But for IT to be, in the old days, we'd say an honorable profession, we do need to be able to stand by our credentials and be able to prove them. And that is still where I would hope we are going.
It is.
Any response from your recent experiences of going through the process? I mean, it's interesting to hear how Monica has had to bring together an awful lot of evidence and
Yes,
supporters to
together
show
with
it.
certificate.
Having made it all the way through, what are your reflections about that?
Yeah. Okay. So for me, the company that I work for, they are a BCS Platinum partner. So we do have plenty of BCS fellows that actually work within the organisation. Already have like the recognition and things like that. It was in terms of the application process. As Monica mentioned, it is pretty hefty. When you first look at that application form, it's you have to demonstrate all of your competencies. You have to provide supporting evidence to back up all of these experiential statements. Tell me about a time where you did this. Tell me about examples when you did this and that, or show how this was ethical, how was this professional, etc., etc. The list goes on. Yeah, I mean, I got plenty of support from a lot of my colleagues around me working within my company. I was fortunate enough to be supported by a BCS fellow as well. I spent many a day coffees. A lot of time spent just trying to answer a question, tweet a question, and almost kind of, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, kind of almost get it, perfect. I know eventually you kind of say, right, I need to stop here. I can't keep tweaking it every single time. Yeah, just submit it and see what happens. Yeah, I thought, it took me maybe, the whole process probably took me around a couple of months on. I didn't want to be pressured to, press the submit button if I wasn't ready. I just wanted to really answer a question, step away from it, self-reflect, and then have a look again. And then also providing the supporting evidence as well was quite important. For me, working for like a financial services company as well, I had to be careful, as to what I could provide and what I couldn't provide, but I still needed to demonstrate that evidence. Yeah, I'm just very happy that I managed to get through the process.
Any other questions? We'll come back to you.
Hi, it's nice to meet you. I'm Geraldine. I'm a Chief Digital Information Officer working in the NHS. So my question's about the professional recognition. I absolutely support the professional standards. The chartered status is a fantastic move. I've always thought it's really good to self-accredit. So the other side of the coin, isn't it, is the market, it's the sectors, it's the kind of the recruitment space, it's the ask for a prospective employer to require this, to put it in the job description, to put it in the advert, and it's the pool, and that actually generates the recognition and the value. It means the employers are valuing chartered status rather than it being a self-generated professional thing to do, which I'm sure we would always agree to, because that's why we're here. But what's the role of BCS, and what are the panel's thoughts about how the influencing happens within different sectors or within the market generally to start asking for our professionals to be registered in this way?
I can comment on that, but I think that the question would be to Alistair. Although I love that you represent healthcare and life sciences. So I work for healthcare and then life sciences consulting, and I think that definitely it's worth going for the charter status, and even in this industry, highly regulated, it would be a perfect match. And that's also my motivation, because I want to follow the professional conduct, and I do a lot of e-learnings at work about data integrity, not human integrity, and security by design. So why not like human security by design? So it's a perfect match for me, and that's my motivation on this side. Of other things, of course, which were already mentioned here.
Yeah, so I think it's the answer is probably multifaceted in many respects, in the sense that part of the question is really also to society. What does society want from its IT professionals? It may be that, and there are, you know, constant ongoing pushes against politicians about how interested they are in potentially legislating in certain areas about, you know, mandating people to be on a particular register. So my personal view, stepping away from the presidential seat, as it were, would be that I think that is likely to happen in cyber. It might happen in AI, because these are high risk, high stake places where people will get badly burnt if it goes wrong. Yes, you and I as citizens, and that's what scares people out there in Moorgate at the moment. I suspect it would have stopped them. So it may be that we will see legislation in critical areas. I don't think it will ever be everywhere, because that would be just burdensome. There's another situation which I think we look enviously at, is in and around the Chartered Human Resource people, the CIPD, Chartered Institute of Professional Development, I think the letters stand for. They've engineered a situation where very, very few boards will actually employ an HR director who isn't actually a chartered professional, because what has actually happened is the insurers have turned around to these boards and said, we want you to mitigate your risks in HR lawsuits, etc. We need you to be doing best practice and way beyond to bring down your insurance. So what's actually happened is that in many, many cases, companies have gone for chartered HR professionals. And I think I would like to see us move in that direction as much as we can. That means obviously having conversations with insurers, but insurers, interestingly, are picking up on that. And I noticed with Cyber Essentials, which comes with built-in insurance, that's all seemed to be quite an awesome thing to get past for most SME organizations, some larger organizations more scarily. But the reality is that, in fact, insurers have started thinking and going into the market thinking, wow, you know what? This is really easy money. Give us 100, 200 quid and we'll insure you for cybercrime. No, they suddenly realised that the claims are going through the roof. So everyone has filled in far higher levels now, because they want that to happen now. It seems to me that they will soon start asking, who's telling you and giving you cyber advice? So that's going to be people who are on some form of, then we start getting that traction where I suspect we'll see, and I think we'll see that in AI.
So if I could build on that, just on top of what Alistair's saying, regulation is tough. There are 280 regulated professions, of which only 155 require a license to practice, and this is what we're sort of talking about here. Takes a while to get there. For us, I think one of the most important things is as we segment and as we have those different specialisms, then certain specialisms are going to be affecting life and livelihoods more than others. And I think it's those companies and those organizations that purchase IT skills. Really, we need to be explaining to them the value of CITP, the value of chartered status, and get them to ask for it, because they are the ones who are engaging externally. So if you're a doctor and you're using a tool which was created by AI, wouldn't you be interested to know whether the person who created it actually was qualified? Wouldn't you be interested to know that the nurse who's helping you is qualified? Of course you are. Maybe as we get further down those lines and people really start to understand who's creating these things and who's helping who, then you can start to ask for it. And what Alistair's doing through Chartered Week is raising the, if you like, the understanding of chartered generally. Professional, means many, many things to different people. For many, it just means they get paid, as opposed to being an amateur. Chartered is a really good word, and I think raising it this week is what we're doing, can help in that discussion.
I fully agree with that. Thank you. And that's a great point around if you're a doctor, because of course that's the industry I'm from. So I am the person in my organisation who signs off the bit of paper that says, yes, we can use this artificial intelligence. I happen to be qualified. I don't check. But I would love that to be the case generally in my industry. Thanks.
Thank you for the question.
I just want to add one other thing is that while it's on the roadmap, part of the sort of chartered planning in some respects, but there is an idea of actually looking at organizations, because we need to create the demand, you're right, we need to have that pull through. And in our industry, we quite often have platinum partners. So Microsoft have a scheme for their vendors. I think Amazon does, Cisco, all of them have that scheme. And I think we can do something very similar in our professionalism piece by offering organizations the idea of registered practice, which in the long term, and I would like to see that become chartered. Of other levels of maturity of that concept. But the sort of things that I would like to see in that is that all projects, all client assignments, whether that's for an external client or as an embedded IT team for an internal client inside the same organisation, but essentially sort of all work signed off by a chartered professional. So you bring in play all the things that to do that sort of thing, and accountability as well. And you probably also ask simple things like, you've got professional indemnity, very important if they're acting for external clients, obviously. For internally bedded organisations, that's probably also going to be quite valuable, because I'd like to see those sorts of practices basically saying we will actually train people and take people on a career path from entry at graduate level through to becoming maybe a technician and then chartered professional, and therefore giving people a career path. One of the things that we have in our industry at the moment is you leave university or you leave your apprenticeship or whichever route you've taken to get there, and where the hell do you go next? It's a bit of a mystery to most people, and it's people fall into those pathways. Now, from my own career, I've moved all over the place, as I've said earlier. And we have to recognise that. I think actually having that sort of transportability, which the new chartered standard actually has, because you can have these separate specialisms, setting yourself into this narrow piece of IT in concrete, you can actually swim into other sections and develop your career as is appropriate, without actually incurring too many hurdles and barriers between that. So I think, this isn't a finished piece of work in that sense. It's a big thing. And as Paul says, I think Chartered Week is really, for me, it's quite important. It's actually shouting that we can be chartered in IT, or digital and computing, and that's really quite important. Public to understand that they need to have chartered inside it.
Yeah, thank you. We've got a question or two online, so I'll go to Deli's question online. Paul, this is probably one for you. Can you hear? Can I check that before?
We can hear this time.
Excellent, I'm glad to hear it. So she asks, how does CITP status complement other certifications? For example, if one was CISSP certified professional, are these certifications considered or have a weighting when assessments are being made?
It's part of when you're submitting your evidence against the various Sophia levels that you want to submit, whether Sophia level 3 or Sophia level 5, those things are included, because you will include those certifications in your submission, and not just the certification, because we want to be able to see that you've actually used it as well, because that's part of the process. So yes, they're included. Include your certification if that's in the area of skill that you want to demonstrate. And yes, include how you've actually implemented it as well. So those things, yeah, we absolutely do include others. Otherwise, we're not setting the sole bar. We're building on what other people are doing.
So I'd like to add to that and say, just going back to what I said earlier, that I think CITP should be ideally reviewed as the sort of capstone over the top at the end of the day of a load of certifications, because they all build as evidence. They're all capable of getting you further along the path to chartered registration. But I think it's really important to understand what the piece of paper that hangs in the atrium, the Royal Charter, that's really almost a contract between BCS and the state, essentially saying you can run this register. And it's highly unlikely that I don't think a Royal Charter has been taken away for several centuries. So it is in that sense.
One more question from the audience. I remember about you.
Thank you. In my opinion, the Microsoft Satisfied Professional and the CIPT, I believe, in my opinion, I presume they are the same thing. But notwithstanding, that's my first question. If there's any similarity, maybe one of the panel can just elaborate. Also, I'd like to know duration and cost, or is there any specific duration if you want to enroll as CIPT?
CITP.
So the first question was
Microsoft Satisfied Professional.
Yeah, I would say very different. I would say the following things about any of the vendor provided qualifications. Is my immediate instinct is that that's to do with the Microsoft stack and is part of the Microsoft ecosystem for producing Microsoft sales. Lovely.
Okay.
So I think CITP is basically much more on the ethics, basically saying that you're an ethical practitioner regardless of the tech stack that you're using. And I think I wouldn't see them as equivalent. I would see the Microsoft certification being a certification which evidences that you've reached that standard. As Paul said, have you actually applied it is an important aspect. So there's that extra step to get to CITP. So yeah, that would be the answer. My answer to the first question.
Yeah. So when you're talking about the Microsoft one,
Yeah, that's I think you've done the CITP. I mean, I'm saying about the certification.
AWS Microsoft exams.
Yeah.
Outside of everything else that I do, including working on the committee for the Enterprise Architecture Specialist Group for the BCS. I'm also recognised as an AWS community builder, and inside Google's program, I'm an ambassador for the Women Tech Makers one. From the ones that I've seen, they seem very different.
Okay.
They're all fantastic programs, but with CITP, it was so far the only thing, apart from ISACA, where I had to, in order to get CISA, I had to evidence my work and all that bits and pieces. It was the only one that was based on my experience as an IT professional, and it's also time boxed as well. So it's recent.
Sorry, there's just something which flashed across my head as well, which is probably rather negative, but the important thing about being on a register is you can come off it. So if you're in, if you are breached the code of conduct, or if you're proven to be incompetent, then place on the register is not secure at all. In fact,
it's not. Sorry to interject. It's not like a kind of self-learning like some other professional that you can actually do your. As a professional, you know everything. Unfortunately, you don't have the certification. Then you can sit for an exam and become CITP.
Yeah. You have to demonstrate that you're at that level. So I mean, if one rolls back and looks at what the Trivia Council Office, which are the people who Royal Charters, the broad definition that is used, and it's very broad and it varies across the professions, but it's the sort of reference point is a master's level qualification and around about 5 years experience. Now, that doesn't mean you have to have a master's degree, it's the equivalent. So if you've got more qualifications, you might have less experience needed. If you've got no qualifications, you're going to need a lot more experience. But that's an important part of the mix.
And you have to become a member if you are not, which is an important prerequisite regarding also the code of ethics. I guess that it was mentioned already, but it's a part of.
When you use the word membership, that means you have to renew.
Yes, because basically you're pledging part of the thing of CITP is it sits on top of professional membership, And basically, you know, the word professional we bandy around, Paul was mentioning that it's people are paid, and it's what people commonly think about. In fact, if you unpack the word professional, it's the stem is profess, which if you go back to the original meaning of the word profess, it meant that you avowed yourself to an external set of rules. That often was in Middle Ages, sort of a monastic order or whatever. But you're basically saying, I am going to act as a professional. I am going to uphold an external code of conduct, which it, and I'm going to actually certify against that on a regular basis. I'm going to prove that I'm doing my continuing professional development, because quite frankly, if someone doesn't do continuing professional development in a profession such as ours, which says, and is proud to say that an internet year is about 2 months or 3 months, and time wishes by, and you know, things that I knew 5 years ago are completely unsaleable now. You need to have that continuing commitment. So that membership is an important aspect.
Last question, sorry about that.
It's okay, it's okay.
Sorry. Because apparently, supposing I qualify as a CITP,
Yeah.
and I progress on my own and very competency, I can do whatever required of me and keep on to the standard up to date, and I decided not to be a member. What does that got to do with being the qualification I've got?
So the CITP would cease the moment you leave. But that, if you look at the Chartership, that's exactly the
Okay, I just want to understand.
You're basically saying, with that profess bit is really quite important. You're saying, I'm right. You might, anyone in the room might be very ethical. The point is that you're saying, I'm prepared for my peers to judge me, and ongoingly judge that I am actually ethical and upholding the code of conduct.
I understand it.
So if you cease to be a member of the organization, then you're basically taking yourself out of that kind of jurisdiction. And then who knows?
Yeah.
Because of the ethical aspect of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
For example, I was a CISA and a C-risk, both of them are ISACA certifications, for about 15 to 20 years, but I no longer am. Why? Because I don't pay the subs anymore. So does that mean that I'm fundamentally different? I hope not, but you know, likewise, I'm not part of that organization anymore. This is to reinforce what Alistair said. So you've got to be in an organization to be certified and to maintain your membership of the organization and your familiarity with what's required.
Latest update.
Yeah.
I think you're driving towards a sort of a fundamental difference between chartership and say my O levels. You know, I don't believe O levels can be rescinded. You can lose the certificate, I found out, that's for sure. But with that chartership, it's about that ongoing membership. It's not a point in time. It's saying that you're constantly at that level. And
It's about current competence. Current competence. So when you face an employer or you face anybody and they say, are you currently competent? Can I trust that you can do it today? The answer is, if you CITP, yes. There's a very good chance you are. If you're not CITP, well, you have to prove it in some other way. It's not a historical thing. It's, are you currently competent? Which is why we renew, and we ask you to renew today after every 5 years, but in the future every 3 years, just to prove that you're currently competent.
From my perspective, is that Paul's team essentially is written to be saying, I'm up in the end of May or something. I will have to go. I am. So I shall become incompetent unless I do something about it, Paul. So I will have to step out of this chair in a couple of weeks' time. I'll actually have to recertify and reprove my competence.
So we're pretty much at 7 o'clock. I'd like to ask all of our panel if they'd like to leave us with some closing comments. For everyone in the room, we can keep the conversation going with refreshments and networking. We have a couple of questions online that I'll save, and I'm going to ask the panel to respond to in our email to sum up at the end. So we'll try and get to everybody's questions one way or another. But let's have some closing comments. I'm going to look to Paul first, since he's on the screen. Would you like to let us know your closing thoughts, Paul?
So look, thank you very much for the questions. I think they've really been very, very helpful in we're going through a transition. This industry is constantly changing. We're going to adapt and adjust and change and make things, but the standard of CITP will become very important in the industry. And I'd just like to say thank you to you all for coming along tonight, and I ask you really to be our disciples for what this is all about. So thank you.
There's you next, Monica.
Oh, I have a good quotation, and I hope that we can leave it with the thoughts from Turing, that we can only see a short distance ahead, but we can see plenty that needs to be done, and I guess that seeing plenty that needs to be done cannot be always addressed by all of us, but we can feel accountable for the short steps. And for me, the CITP is one of these short steps on my pathway. So that would be my final thought.
Arena, should we go to you?
I guess if you're considering charter status with CITP, stop thinking about it, just start. Don't overthink the process like I did. We talked a lot about how long and supporting evidence and all that bits and pieces, but the BCS has amazing resources. They talked about the chartered pathway sessions, which are available in Eventbrite, as well as really great guidance, and there's information inside the standard as well. I like to look at the appendix and also the annex, because what you get there is the assessment criteria, what you're being judged against. And I stare at it and I go, right, I want the top one. Is my answers going to meet that? For me, I knew about the process, so it did take me a lot longer than I would have liked to actually start writing the application. But when I started writing the application, I locked myself in a room. Not actually, but put myself in a room 4 hours, because it was stories that I had. I knew what stories I was going to tell beforehand. I'd read the guidance to get to my first draft. If you're already chartered, look at the peers and your colleagues around you. If there's something you think, I don't think they're chartered yet, reach out to them, because sometimes it's just that little bit of confidence and that support that can really help someone realize that, you know, they are eligible and this could be a really good pathway for them. But yeah, don't overthink it, just start.
So
Yeah, I would just absolutely encourage anyone to just give it a go. The application process can be, it can take as long or as little as you want it. So I would say, you know, definitely take your time, don't pressure yourself, and I guess to some respect, believe in yourself, don't kind of doubt yourself like I might have done right at the beginning. And I guess, yeah, if anything, it's a period of self-reflection, and yeah, it just have fun with it, really.
brilliant advice. Thank you. Alistair, would you like to leave us with your closing thoughts?
I was going to keep it simple and just say, do it. And in doing it, make sure you engage in Chartered Week. You might be saying, I'm not quite ready, but I'm going to set course, so aspiring to do it. Engage with the Chartered Week programme, declare, see it as a start of your journey towards becoming chartered. I think it's really, really important. Having that parity with other chartered professionals that you might engage with through work or wherever, whether that could be a chartered accountant, chartered marketeer, you'll be able to look them in the face and say, I'm a chartered IT professional at the same level. That is worth a lot, I think.
This has been a brilliant discussion. I'm going to close now so people online can continue their evenings as they're expected to. Thank you so much to all our panelists and my co-host Monica.
Oh, thank you, Joe. You've been brilliant.
Yeah, and I'll see all of you in person in this room over here, and everyone online. Thank you for your participation and for joining us online and your questions there. We'll follow up with an email, like I said, so we can wrap up with any questions. And so thank you all very much.
Just like a last word, say thank you to Monica and Joe, yes, who are sort of driving force for this event.
I would just like to add something whilst we're off air. It's very important that you review what's out there about you, especially in this internet age. I'll give you the example. If, for example, you're a Chancellor of the Exchequer, and it's well known that you were at the Bank of England for 10 years, and you said so in numerous speeches. Oh no, you were actually there for 5.5 years. make sure that what you say is consistent. And you were there as an economist. No, you weren't. You were there as a consultant. Make sure that what you say is consistent, because otherwise, I'm not sure you deserve to be chartered.
But there's no penalty for the person that did it. What about that?
Yeah.
Isn't it? There's no penalty for that person that did it.
I've no comment.